Good afternoon, everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. Coming on today, hoping I can catch some people and try to wake them up. You know, I've been talking about the Postal Service for a while now, and how everything works in regards to the imports and exports and stuff, and routing, and whether it's public routing, and how many people have their hands in the till in that route along the way, and trying to establish just a plain end-to-end routing for ourselves so that those hands, third-party hands, don't get involved. And because it's all postal roads and routes, that's who we need to deal with. So I've got something, a little bit of private education based on the information in the public domain that we really need to start learning ourselves so we can express how we educate our own children without the interference of government, period. See, they have no power to educate your children unless you give them that power. So we're going to go over something today. We're going to go over what they know as the General Education Provisions Act. General Education Provisions Act. And I don't know who's watching, but I've only got 2 viewers, so please share the video. And this is going to be a long one today, guys. This is going to be a couple hours at least, because I'm going to go through this General Education Provisions Act and explain to you how it's all military, because they're using military terms, and because it's done through the customs laws. We know that that military is customary. See, everybody wants to run to the different codes of their nations to find out the laws. And I keep trying to tell everybody, you really need to go back to the scripture, because the scripture will tell you everything that's going on. It tells us we're not supposed to be reading and writing. That's not our job. We're supposed to be listening to the Word of God. We're supposed to be observing how it operates in Mother Earth, Mother Nature. That's our true lesson guide as we go forth as living souls in Mother Nature. And everybody wants to be involved in the person and write a story, and they're not the ones holding the damn pen. And when you do, when you are holding your pen, you're putting the information in somebody else's records instead of your own. So we're going to talk a little bit about the public education as a general education provided by military, because that's in effect what it is. See, you have a provisional government in this country. You have a republic if you can keep it. But that's on an individual basis. The people that run this government are running it provisionally under military enforcement of the law of nations and the Treaty of Berne, which is indentured through the Constitution of the Universal Postal Union, that allows this nation to provide a Congress and a Constitution for that Congress. Again, it all extends from the Universal Postal Union and the Postal Congress. Okay? And we're going to see that in this General Education Provisions Act, both the customs and the military codes. Okay? It's going to start out with the employment code. It's going to go to the tax code. And then it's going to go to the customs codes. And then we're going to have all kinds of codes in between, and then it's going to show you a bunch of military codes. One of them being the Trading with the Enemies Act. It mentions Trading with the Enemies Act in the General Provisions Act for a reason. Because they're training you to fill out their military script for trading with the Allies. Now, in trading with the Allies, they want to make sure that you're not having private communications with enemies. So while you've been indoctrinated into believing in this public education system, that's what they're doing, is they're training you to be public. They're training you to perform the functions of public officers in uniform. That's what the public office is all about. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Yes, Holly, that's what I'm getting at. We should be teaching our own children the spirituality of being a living soul. And we see here is his TOPN, oh God, what is that? Popular name. It stands for something popular name, I can't remember. But they go on, and every one of these acts that you see under this, it'll start out with this, and then it'll tell you what's in a popular name. Popular name. Public. It's popular. It's a big popularity contest. Okay? General Education Provisions Act. Under General Education Provisions Act, which is Public Law 90-247, Title 6, January 2nd, 1968, 81 Stat 814, and you can locate it at 20 USC 1221. And when you look at it says short title, applicability, definitions, and Title 20 is employee benefits. Okay? And so one of the employee benefits is a General Education Provision Act so that you can send your children to one of their military schools. Like I said, the hospitals are military. The schools are military. All these public institutions are military offices. They are needful places and buildings under Congress, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1, 3, 14, and 17. Congress shall lay and collect taxes, duties, and imposts. Posts, as in post stations, post offices. Places where you post articles, whether they be public or private. Except as otherwise provided, this chapter applies to each applicable program of the Department of Education. So if the military wants to educate you, they have to educate you on all of their programs, because that's what applies. They have to educate you about the tax. They have to educate you about the employment. They have to educate you about the banking. And this is what they're failing. They put it in here in the public domain, but they don't say a word about it in the public education that you send your children to. They teach you about reading, writing, and arithmetic so you can follow up your education in all of the rest of the public domains and figure it out what you've been doing all your life. Why you've been posting all these things to everybody else's record. Okay? We can go to 20 USC 1221A, but it says see short title. When you hit the link, it says nothing found. And that's because under 20 USC 1221, according to the grammar, that parentheses means A within this. So we have to go to 1221, and it says Education Provisions Act. That's all it is. It's just telling you that's the name of this. This is the short title for it. And again, like I said, it's status, United States Code. Status, United States Code. Authorizes title. And it says Title 26 right off the bat. So we're already into the tax code. Okay? Cross references. Folks, if you're not involved in the military and you sign your children up for that public education, you are exporting your data elements into their record and using cross references. Because that is not a direct reference to your spirituality. You've been joined in a military force without knowing it. Just like I said, when you go to the hospital and you register for hospital birth.
Hey, let me buy those headphones real quick. Hey, I'm finna bring some. I'll be right back.
So when you sign up for registration at the hospital to give birth, that's exactly what you're doing. You're giving birth. You're not going into labor. You're not in labor. You're not doing the good works of God. You register under a spell of illness for inpatient hospital treatments for a birth registration afterwards. Okay? Same thing with the public education system. You're doing the same damn thing. You're entering into a tax venue for an employee as an employee benefit. Now you notice over here it says 19 CFR. 19 CFR is the customs code. Customs. It's not the Postal Service, it's a customs code. It's customary to tax people because they don't have the education, they don't have the sense to educate themselves in the spirituality. They have to educate themselves in the military form, and therefore they have to fill out military documentation, and that means the military has to do work for them. And for the customary work of military officers doing work for you, you have to file for taxes. Okay, let's look under here, this section here. You notice it's boxed off. So let's look at this section here. Customs warehouses. You know, every time you enter a document, it goes into a drawer, a file drawer, in a bureau. And it's based on the original Bureau of Vital Statistics. Statist, I-C. Statist. You make yourself the police state by wanting them to police you, by entering in documents that have cross references, and you never fix the cross references. Okay? Look at the next one. Cartage. Cartage. Are you of the age to carry something in a cart? Cartage and literage of merchandise. You have to carry something in that cart. When you go to the store, that's a cartage. You're performing the functions of public office by going to a public facility that keeps public military receipts and using a military financial system. The next one. Cartage, Express consignments. If you're going to be signing things, you have to have your intent, what you mean, your mentality about it. Because you're signing on with somebody else, and you better express the trust in doing so. If you don't express that trust, then you're not clarifying the cross-reference. And this is a problem in their military schools, because when you express the spiritual trust, they cannot accept. They cannot teach religion in schools. There is a separation of church and state. So when you sign your children up for school and they don't teach religion in the school, you are signing them up as the state entity. Warehouse and re-warehouse entries and withdrawals. You are allowing cross-references without expressing the differences to be entered with no handwritten statement of your intent. And therefore there is no proper entry into the record, and everything remains presumed. You are operating under the presumption that they put on the record and assuming that it applies to you, and entering things without proper references. Okay? So then that's this square. Now when we look at this one, bonded warehouses. Everyone that you give data elements to, and they're entering those data elements into a file, in a drawer, in a dresser, in that building, however, they are bonded for that record keeping, and that's the tax principle. You have levied a workload on the military forces by entering paperwork. Now they have to return paperwork, and they have to do it efficiently according to the Paperwork Reduction Act. That's environmental protection and conservation. And so by you going across borders from your religious or spiritual state into a military state, you have to be bonded. You have to show that you are capable of efficiently processing paperwork and not violating the Paperwork Reduction Act by filing frivolous fucking bullshit. So we see the next one, and it references the same stuff. So why they duplicated it here, I don't know. I don't care. It's all the same stuff. This one here, we get into a couple different ones, though. Marking of imported articles and containers. Okay, so mom and dad, when you've been indoctrinated into the public education system to write things down by marking them in a certain way, you have exported that data element, and they are imported articles, and they are put into a container, a drawer, a file, a bureau, a desktop, something. Okay? You're the one doing the marking. Mom, you did the marking at the hospital. That was the maternity ward that marked down elements that allowed the presumption to ride for paternity. Paternity is false. Maternal, material. Ma, you are supposed to honor your mother first. You are supposed to honor your mother first. You are supposed to honor your mother first. 3 times you are to honor your mother first before you honor your father. And in recognizing the correct mother, you are paying honor to the one Father which art in heaven. Our actions speak louder than words while we are in earth, in the terrestrial plane of material, different. Material is a cross-reference of the maternity, where one was born, how one was born, and when that process started. Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. And as soon as mom finds out she's pregnant, she starts entering a paternal record. Prenatal. In relations to her own paternity and patriotism under the United States citizen as a resident operating as a transmitting utility in a foreign trade zone. That hospital is a foreign trade zone. Okay? The next one. Oops. Country of origin marking. See, if you're claiming that U.S. citizen, you're putting a mark down for that as a country of origin. And that's false. You do not have a country of origin. You have a time of origin. In beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. That is your origin. Your origin is with God. Before I formed thee in the belly, before I knew thee, before I formed thee in the belly, before thou was cast from the womb, I sanctified thee. I ordained thee a prophet unto the nations, countries, states, foreign trade zones, municipalities. You are a prophet unto those entities. That's what you should mark everything with. Just like a dog going around and pissing on his territory, you should be pissing on these motherfuckers. Liquidation of duties. Not liquidation of assets, but liquidation of duties. If you remember the Wicked Witch in The Wizard of Oz, she could no longer fulfill her wickedness because she was liquidated. It got rid of the material of her existence. The next one, again they duplicated. The next one, 1307. Convict made goods. Importation prohibited. Let's talk about them license plates that all them trustees with the victory, the victor. They are a co-trustee with the victor, but the victor is the warden as the other co-trustee, and he's telling them what to do. You're going to make plates for us, so we can travel around under the auspice of having a contract with the Postal Congress. Importation prohibited. You cannot import plates made from Florida into Iowa. Iowa has to make its own plates. And they have to have somebody in a cross-reference that is with the victor to make those goods. A convict is in agreement to make those goods. All goods, wares. That prison is a warehouse making goods. By convict labor. And or forced labor and indentured labor. Under penal sanctions. Military sanctions. And remember, we spoke about Book of Enoch, chapter 69, verses 8 through 11, where we're not supposed to be using a pen, according to the watcher Penemu, who then speaks of Peniel and Peniel, all very close to penile and pineal gland. Before you write anything down in a pen, refer to the pineal gland, the import-export center of spirituality, the Christ dome. (19 CFR 12) special classes of merchandise. Because you are special. Special meaning private. The next one, user fee for custom services. See, you have to pay for your child's education in that public education system, and it's supposed to be so you can pay all the administrators. And that's a user fee for the custom services of those administrators at certain small airports, whether you speak it verbally or orally through your oral commands, and other facilities. Face, eye, lights. Because you can't see a face in the dark. Customs, financial, and accounting procedure. Collection of customs duties. Everyone that collects a document and you want a copy, they're going to charge you because they have to pay the duties because they haven't been liquidated. That's why it's first. That's why it's first. Collection of customs duties. Taxes, fees, interest, and other charges. They have to collect the customs duties first. The duty is the actual certification of a United States citizen with a qualified statement. That qualified statement in foreign trade zones is a contract or an oath of office. One or the other. No other way around it. None. General provisions. Aye, aye, General. It's a military provision. We do not have a republic form of government because we didn't keep it. The republic form of government is done through the postal service and not a fucking provisional military that doesn't understand how the postal service works. Okay? I urge people to understand, every article you post in every venue, you better know what you're doing. Otherwise, they are going to grab it and charge you for it. If you're entering it into a commercial environment, it is a charging instrument. Period. Air commerce regulations, everything you say. Now, guarantee they're not going to talk about that in here, but I want you to understand that concept. Everything you say, actions speak louder than words. Shut the fuck up. Start learning this shit first before you start speaking. And in the meantime, only do what is in your heart. The next one is bonds and other security. This reads almost like obligations and other securities of the United States. Doesn't it? This one here, however, says bonds and other security. Now, if the United States under 18 U.S.C. 8 is responsible and obligations and other securities of the United States includes all bonds. In any case in which bond or other security is not specifically required by law, the Secretary of the Treasury may by regulation or specific instructions require or authorize customs officers to require such bonds or other security as he or they may deem necessary for the protection of the revenue or to assure compliance with any provision of law, regulation, or instruction which the Secretary of Treasury or the Customs Service may be authorized to enforce. I assure you, people, they have no authorization to enforce any bond unless they get that congressional authority to do so from the Postal Congress. So, by inadvertently just automatically entering into their accounting system, they are going to require you to have a bond. That bond is a birth certificate, the birth registration, wherein they assign a social security number to a newborn child in an agreement at the state level with the Department of Defense. It is all military. It is a military fidelity bond with the Postal Union. The International Postal Union has a bond with an entity known as the United States of America under that indenture of the Constitution of the Universal Postal Union to enforce the law of nations while using the Treaty of Berne as the ultimate naval treaty to protect all literary and artistic works. Vessels in foreign and domestic trades. As soon as you start writing shit down, it becomes a vessel. It becomes a vessel of intangible thoughts that can now be relayed to somebody else if they're observed. It is a vessel. Under that vesselage, you have to use your own customs relations with the insular possessions in Guantanamo Bay Naval Station. This is why they take all the international terrorists and people that are committing treason, sedition, and wire fraud and cybersecurity terroristic threats to Guantanamo Bay. They are in the international forum and they cannot import goods under the normal prison system. It's a private prison industry, and they have to take it to the international public venue. And that is Guantanamo Bay Naval Station, adhering strictly to the Treaty of Berne and the enforcement of the law of nations. Articles conditionally free, subject to a reduced rate, etc. Telling you, they already provide in the Constitution of the Universal Postal Union, Article 1, the thing that indentures both the law of nations and the Treaty of Berne. Freedom of transit is guaranteed throughout the entire territory of the Union. Yet we have private industries, private prison industries producing license plates. And everybody believes that they have to have that license plate. And without knowledge that in order to put a license plate on your, quote, motor vehicle, you have to make a handwritten statement of your intent upon registering that automobile for use, at least 50% of its use for trade, or business, which is defined as the performance of the functions of public office, and therefore you must have an oath of office to make that declaration of intent. Otherwise, it is already under the prior conditions existing free. Period. Special classes of merchandise. What'd I do? There we go. That bond, transportation in bond. When you enter those data elements, you are entering for immediate delivery into transportation. Transportation in bond form. Because you keep signing everything. The signature is that of a U.S. citizen, known as a local resident, operating as a transmitting utility. You're not supposed to be doing that. You're not qualified. Customs warehouses, container stations, and control of merchandise therein. Once you hand it over, they have control. You no longer have control. Period. Very simple statements, folks. Certain importations temporarily free of duty. There are certain ones that are temporarily free of duty. Well, if they're temporarily free of duty, why? Because there's a process that has to be gone through in order to qualify for proper entry. And yet, if you use that process, it's an extended process that could take up to a year. If you're ready to go, that would be interference with commerce, interference with international trade. You are free to trade with whoever you want, but in making a declaration in order to trade under the auspices of custom codes of the United States, there's an entry process. And if you want to enter in through using the United States as a co-partner, a convict, then feel free to do so. Otherwise, all you have to do is express your cross-references. You can't apply for an oath of office under those auspices because you're not organized in that fashion. You're not organized to be conducting trade agreements with other people. You're just making simple exchanges, not requiring a trustee. A trust shall not fail for want of trustee. General provisions. Again, there's that general provisions. We go to 112. Carriers, cartmen, and lightermen. Carriers. You're a common carrier. If you're carrying that information, you give it to them. That's what they're looking for. That's what they want. That's a goods. That's a service. You provided the service of transferring data elements on a piece of paper, which is good, until properly rebutted. Customs and Border Protection bonds. That's the fidelity bond. Fuck that surety bond. Fuck the insurance bonds. Fuck the automobile insurance. Fuck the housing insurance. Fuck the flooding insurance. Who covers all postal roads and routes? The Postal Service. All bonds go through the Postal Service. Period. All of them. All of them have to go through the Postal Service. Again, under the auspice of Congress. Car nets. You feel like you've been caught in a net using that car? What is a car net? What is a car net? It's related to the Harmonized Tariff Schedule. And that's what they're catching you in. They're catching you in the tax net. This part is concerned with the use of international customs documents known as carnets. That's a public system, folks. Public means international, because they get all of their authority at the local county level, local municipal level, by following that Treaty of Berne and the Law of Nations. It's the only way they get it. The only way they get it. Otherwise, you would be operating in a communist country regulating their own codes without outside interference. It also contains provisions concerning the approval of associations. When you start associating with them by handing them documents to issue carnets in the United States covering merchandise to be exported. Like I said, that document is a piece of merchandise. It has valuable, intangible data elements that they need in order to survive. They live on the intangible data elements to be able to provide the physical enforcement and to guarantee carnets issued abroad covering merchandise to be imported. The carnet serves simultaneously as a customs entry document and a customs bond. A man is bound. A man's word bonds him. A man is bound by his words. It's customary. Air commerce regulations. General order unclaimed and abandoned merchandise. See, that general birth registration should have been resolved within 30 days. After 7 years, it goes as abandoned. Well, of course, they can't have abandonment on there, so they have to reissue it because that survivor is known to be alive. They're still entering some kind of customs documents. They just haven't claimed it. It's unclaimed. And they have quotas just like the police. They have to have enough material information coming in to quantify their use of it and this fictional cost and charges. Mail importation of absolute quota merchandise. The merchandise is the quota, and that's the documentation you're giving them with those intangible data elements that says you're a United States citizen, which is a false record. You cannot possibly be a United States citizen, first of all, unless you were actually born in the United States. Anybody else born outside of that District of Columbia, the nationality is a conference. It is a grant of United States citizenship to be able to follow their paperwork and issue customs paperwork that they designed and formatted. Entry of merchandise. Mom, when you were at that hospital, you entered merchandise. And then they quantified the merchandise as a living soul, as a citizen of the United States, because it was born to a resident. Property of that provisional government. Chattel. And it was entered into a foreign trade zone. 19 USC 81N and 81O talks about operating as a transmitting utility as a resident, and the only persons allowed to reside in the zone are federal, state, or municipal officials or agents whose resident presence is deemed necessary by the board. The board being the Department or the Secretary of Commerce and the Secretary of the Treasury. Now, the Bureau of Vital Statistics is the entry of the birth registration and the assignment of a Social Security number to a newborn child, and that is the start of all of it for the newborn. That Bureau of Vital Statistics is regulated by the Department of Commerce. It is a commercial piece of merchandise. Was the trade fair? Because mom got no equal consideration. There was no consideration given to mom. So was that trade of data elements fair? Was a trade of data elements explaining spell of illness fair? For the trade of data elements creating a presumption of a United States citizen based on false information? I have serious questions for these people. Investigation of claims of evasion of anti-dumping and countervailing duties. Countervailing duties. This goes to the liquidation. If you are not created in a solid foundation of duties themselves, then the countervailing duties already still exist and don't need any liquidation. They themselves stand. He commanded, and it was done. He spake, and it stood fast. Claims for liquidated damages. That's where you liquidate their record. And it's penalties, penal system, secured by bonds. That fidelity bond is what secures the prisons being able to operate in these territories. Okay? (26 CFR 48). Here we go back to the tax code. Manufacturers and retailers excise taxes. All those products manufactured in them prisons, that's where they're making their money. One of the places is that excise tax. Now, of course, all your other automobile manufacturers and everything are still making the same taxes, whether they're located here or in a foreign country, because even they are considered by paperwork foreign to the United States. They are a corporate entity that incorporated under the laws of the United States. Okay? Here we go. 50 CFR. That's that military code. Nationality. Seizure and forfeiture procedures. And this is done. Notice it says wildlife and fisheries. Remember we were talking about environmental protection? Conservation laws? The regulations of this part establish procedures relating to property seized or subject to forfeiture under various laws enforced by the service. United States Fish and Wildlife Service. You know, under 7 U.S.C. 136, animal includes man. Just so you know. 15 CFR, which is foreign trade. Now here it says 19 U.S. Code 2436 was eliminated. Okay? Oh, I see what it is. These are the codes and these are the CFRs. These are the statutes and these are the enforcement regulations. So when we look at that, it says ELIM. It means it was eliminated. It'll say, oh, designation of eligible articles. So this one hasn't been, it's up for elimination evidently. Designation of eligible articles. The President is authorized to designate articles as eligible articles from all beneficiary developing countries. beneficiary developing countries for the purposes of this subchapter by executive order. So what we're doing when we enter that birth registration is entering as a citizen of the United States, or we have to give them designation of eligible articles as a beneficiary developing country. Now, I'm not developing as a country, but we have the same equality of developing as a beneficiary. This disqualifies everything else because it qualifies as a country. But we can cross through that. We can line item veto that and adopt the designation of eligible articles. Now this is important because this is Treaty of Berne, which protects the literary and artistic works. Okay? So if they're protecting their work, their literary work, they have to protect it. Okay? While it's in the public domain, I can grab a copy of it and amend it. Now it is my literary artwork amending that, and they have to protect that. It's an expression. Okay? Particularly if it's expressing a superior trust. Part 15 CFR Part 2007, this is Commerce and Foreign Trade Regulations relating to foreign trade agreements, not contracts, not internal contracts. Office of the United States Trade Representative. U.S. regulations of the U.S. Trade Representative pertaining to eligibility of articles and countries for the Generalized System of Preference Program. So we have here now what I was just explaining in the other one, where country disqualifies the eligibility part of beneficiary. Now we see pertaining to eligibility of articles and countries, so I can present an article independently without country. Okay, I don't have to have a nationality, guys. You do not have to have a nationality. Everything is by adoption. 19 CFR 10, articles conditionally free. We saw that one before, and that's what I'm talking about. You do not have to be a nation. They're conditionally free already. Tear and draft. This is their scales. The weights and measures. You have to tear the scale first. You have to bring it to zero first. You have to start out at zero first. And then put the articles on there to see how much weight it has. So you start out with zero. And then you start drafting the material elements that come from the intangible thoughts. Again, Treaty of Berne protects these literary and artistic works. Um, 159 is liquidation of duties again. And that's what we're doing in these literary works, the artistic works. We have to liquidate the duties. We have to liquidate our duties ourselves by letting them know we have a greater duty. 1305, immoral articles, importation prohibited. He is a respecter of no persons. This one element will defeat every birth registration at hospital registration for doing his good works and bringing forth another legacy heir as you cast him into the earth and he is given the breath of life, making that man a living soul. You cannot allow them to cross-reference through their documentation of birth registration that you have now just given birth to a person. You, in fact, did the good works of your Creator by following His creation command of loving each other and you loved another man, and in that love, you were trustee for 9 months, the prenatal agreement that you stood by throughout the entire months. And then the water broke. That 9 months was that man's baptism. And if mom isn't speaking and acting the spiritual scripture in that 9 months, she's going to give birth to a person. He might be a great guy, but he's going to be a shitty person. I guarantee you. When that child is the womb, mom and dad should be speaking to it and teaching it from that time. Mom and dad should be acting in their spirituality, in that love, before they consecrate that bond. Then when that bond is created and it's growing in that womb, they should continue with that spirituality. So that when that man is cast forth from the womb and he catches that breath and becomes a living soul, it's already instilled into him through the communications. I knew thee before I formed thee in the belly. That is a communication. And that is the baptism by water. Hold on just a second. And then when that man is cast into this world, he begins his baptism by fire. Quench the coals yourself by being that spiritual being throughout eternity for that child. And that eternity includes before he is cast out of that womb. Period. That's immoral. That is an immoral article. It's an unlawful and false conversion, violating, at least in my belief, my scriptures that I use for my holy writs. He is a respecter of no persons. Saw 12 before, that's that special class. It's because he's a special class. Okay? Mail importations. Anything entered into the mail is an offer or a contract or an advertisement, an inducement. And this is what I talk about. You either enter into the mails or you transit through the mails. Freedom of transit is guaranteed throughout the entire territory of the Union. It doesn't get entered into the territory of the Union. It's throughout. Here we go with all the same ones again. 15 CFR, that's that Foreign Trade and Commerce. Regulations of the Foreign Trade Zones Board. There's that board. Well, let's look at that real quick. Scope, definitions, and authority. Normally they have scope, and then they'll have definitions, and then this is all three in one. Okay? So let's go. Scope. Sets forth regulations including the rules of practice and procedure of the foreign trade zones.
You saw those two, right down at the bottom.
Yeah, those are the ones I use to qualify the phone number.
Okay.
And that's what it is. Remember, those foreign trade zones, everybody's acting as a resident. Qualifying themselves as a resident. Foreign Trade Zones Act of 1934 is amended 19 U.S.C. 81A through 81U. Okay? Remember, 81N and 81O operating as a transmitting utility because you're claiming that you're a resident and the only persons allowed to reside in the zone are federal, state, or municipal officials or agents. You must have an oath of office or have a contract with somebody that has an oath of office. Period. If you don't, you are not qualified. Authority of the board. In general, in accordance with the Act, the procedures of this part, the board has authority to prescribe rules and regulations concerning zones. Nowhere else. It does not speak to land. It does not speak to fixtures appurtenant to the land. It says zones. .46 is foreign trade zones. It tells you. Foreign trade zones. Foreign trade zones are established under the Foreign Trade Zone Act, and the general regulations and rules of procedures are contained in 15 CFR Part 400. CFR Part 400. What is 15 USC 1? The regulations set forth in 15 CFR are trusts, etc., in restraint of trade illegal. Penalty. Every contract, combination in the form of trust or otherwise, or conspiracy in restraint of trade or commerce among the several states or with foreign nations is declared to be illegal. Every restraint, and that birth registration is a fucking restraint. It's a direct violation. Direct violation for failure to publicly educate the residents and their offspring. They do not put this stuff in the public education system for a reason. They want you to keep presuming it so they can keep assuming all of the assets that you give them through the intangible data elements. It's the only way they can survive. And that is the scope. And today we have what's called as a modernized drawback. You can take all that shit back. Remember that drawer? You undraw it and redraw it. You draw it back to the origin. In the beginning was Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was God. God is love, and I apologize for all of my belligerent acts of stupidity and ignorance. But let me now correct your record. (81C). Remember this is the foreign trade zone. Exemption from customs laws of merchandise brought into foreign trade zone. Foreign and domestic merchandise of every description except such as is prohibited by law may, without being subject to the customs laws of the United States, except as otherwise provided in this chapter, be brought into a zone and may be stored, sold, exhibited, broken up, repacked, assembled, distributed, sorted, graded, cleaned, mixed with foreign or domestic merchandise, or otherwise manipulated, or be manufactured except as otherwise provided in this chapter, and be exported, destroyed, or sent into customs territory of the United States therefrom, in the original package or otherwise. But when foreign merchandise is sent from a zone into customs territory or the United States, it shall be subject to the laws and regulations of the United States, provided that whenever the privilege shall be requested, and there has been no manipulation or manufacture effecting a change in tariff classification, that birth registration affects the tariff classification of a newborn right away. The assignment of a Social Security number to a newborn child classifies that newborn child as you owe a debt to the United States. That is immoral. Got it? (27 CFR). Alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, distilled spirits plants. Why are we talking about this? Because you was born under a spell of illness. Distributed illness. And they planted it in a drawer. You might think I'm babbling, but that's okay. Beer, liquor, and articles from Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. Exportation of alcohol. You know, the reason they withdrew prohibition? Because people were too smart. Despite their prohibition, what they did, in fact, just like the Tea Party, and just like they're doing now with marijuana, cannabis, they're providing a provisional source so that people can believe that they are now allowed by that provisional source to do that which that provisional source previously disallowed. You have a right to use any fucking thing you want, people. They don't have the right to allow you to not use or to allow you to use. And you do not owe trillions. Get off of it. Owe no man anything but to love one another. If you're professing that you owe somebody something, then you don't love. Get over it. I hate seeing comments like that. Reports. Because you took it from your port and reported it to their port, and therefore you exported it from yourself, and they imported it. Okay? Congressional advisors for trade policy and negotiations. Now, I don't know who they think they are going to advise me on in their trade policy and negotiations, because they think that I am subject to their Congress. So again, I have to express they are not any authority whatsoever, except under the Postal Congress, which is where they get their authority. And their authority under the law of nations is strictly to protect the literary and artistic works that they handle. Period. Nothing more. Information and advice from private and public sectors. The president shall seek information and advice from representative elements, the data elements in the record. He's not going to come knock on your door and talk to you. He's going to look at the fucking reports everybody else is giving him. How disjointed is that? You hear about the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing? Because there's 1,500 fucking hands in between, and they're all up your ass. Interagency Trade Organization. Now, this is where the United States is a foreign trade zone itself. Through its special maritime and territorial jurisdictions, it puts a map overlay, an extension of that 10 square miles for other people that have ceded, or other entities that have ceded their jurisdiction to them so they could provide foreign trade zones for them, known as states. In those states, the counties cede their jurisdiction to the state for that same privilege. In those counties, they too cede their jurisdiction to the municipality, cede their jurisdiction to the county so they can operate as a foreign trade zone. And it is all presumed that by using a federal address at the lowest level, the resident who doesn't know what the fuck he's doing has also ceded his jurisdiction to the municipality, who then has ceded their jurisdiction, or who has previously ceded their jurisdiction to the county, previously ceding their jurisdiction to the state, previously ceding their jurisdiction to the United States, previously ceding their jurisdiction to the Treaty of Berne, the Law of Nations, the Universal Postal Union under the United Nations. Pure and simple. Again, we go back to trade and foreign trade and commerce, creation, organization, and functions. Okay, I'm in the development stages. I have already created the Keith Orland Little Faith-Based Union, and I'm not organized. And my functions are those of his will. That organization is already created. I am in association with that. I do not have to organize as Keith Orland Little Faith-Based Union under the constructs or auspices of a foreign trade zone. I do not have to do that. Any developing nation takes decades to organize. This is the problem with the Ukraine. Everybody else has got their hands in Ukraine's ass trying to organize them. Regulations of trade, policy, staff, committee. Post offices are inland marine installations staffed with United States Postal Service employees. Bonded warehouses again, articles conditionally free again. We have excise tax on green mail, imposition of excise tax on green mail. In general, Section 5881 of the Code imposes a tax equal to 50% of the gain or other income tax realized by any person on the receipt of green mail. Gain of income realized by the person on the receipt of green mail. Did you get a receipt? Did you realize a gain on it? Was it at least 50%? That's that motor vehicle operator's lease. You have to make a handwritten statement of your intent. And that intent is 50% of its use for trade or business, which is further defined as the performance of the functions of public office. Your intent is for 50% of performance of public office, so that you can impose the tax yourself. You are acting as a tax collector. Beneficiary country. Again, I'm not established or organized as a country. I'm a private foundation, and I have the same right of benefit of the military script use without harm. If they get to use it without harm, I get to use it without harm. You just have to declare certain material elements for cross references. Extension of time for paying taxes. Again, because we're in the development stages and we don't pay taxes and are not qualified to pay taxes, there must be an extension of time for paying taxes. The extension of time is in perpetuity because our intent is not to enter into that foreign trade zone. Again, qualifying it with cross references. He is a respecter of no persons. Oops, wrong one. Excise tax on structured settlement, factoring transactions. So once you've settled and become organized, then you can start factoring your transactions. So you can proceed and administrate. 27 CFR, here we go back to the alcohol, drugs, and manufacturers excise tax on firearms and ammunitions. The DIC Act, the Militia Act, that license, that identification, places you in the Militia Act, that birth registration, places you in the Militia Act, saying that at some point in time you become age of majority and you want to enter in the military forces, they will give you a firearm. They will provide you with firearm and ammunition so you can be part of the militia. If you want to go through some education and become a police officer, you can even do that. Okay, now we get into some customs laws. Customs codes here, 6214, 6213, 6211, 6212. Or excuse me, tax. Let's start out with 164, taxes. General rule. Except as otherwise provided in this section, the following taxes shall be allowed as a deduction for taxable year within which paid or accrued. That's at 50%. They're going to give you a deduction. But you have to qualify that 50%. Otherwise, it's just a presumption. 6211 is definition of a deficiency. Deficiency. In other words, the data elements on the record prove a deficiency because you've never taken an oath. You don't have a valid contract. That is a deficiency. Okay? All you got to do is correct that record. Give them a notice of the deficiency. Restrictions applicable deficiency. Petition to the tax court. I don't petition it. I put it in the public venue on my site. If they don't like it and they want to try to contact me, I'm going to send them my site. I'm not going to send them their codes. I'm going to send them my site with a private little email cross-referencing their codes. Determinations by tax court. I don't give a fuck what your determination is. Your determination is already proven to be immoral. I don't put up with it anymore. None. These are all repealed, I believe. Repealed, yep. But when you go down to notes, they'll tell you what it was relating to. Relating to information regarding windfall profit on domestic crude oil. Repeal applicable to crude oil removed from the premises on or after August 23, 1988, set out as an effective date 1988 amendment note under Section 164 of this title. So we already saw that, 164. We read that. That one too is repealed. Let's look at this one. Foreign Trade Regulations, General Requirements, Purpose and Definitions. Purpose. This part sets forth the foreign trade regulations as required under the provisions of Title 13. What's Title 13, folks? Title 13 is the Census Bureau. Statistics. The birth registration is entered into the Bureau of Vital Statistics. Now, the Bureau of Vital Statistics, like I said earlier, is regulated by the Department of Commerce. It is, in fact, a trust instrument, and it is, in fact, an immoral trust instrument because with a population of 380 million and no educational curriculum throughout the entire 50 states of that union, no one teaches trust law and how it operates in accordance to the Bureau of Vital Statistics and your part in it. No one. Hell, in driver's education class, they don't even teach about your right to travel. Your freedom of transit is guaranteed throughout the entire territory of the Union. But if you're going to subject yourself to a contract or oath of office, you got to have a driver's license. We got to teach you how to drive. They don't tell you that in school, do they? That is what is immoral about the entire public education system. That is what is immoral about the entire birth registration. U.S.C. 301. Collection and publication. You're the one that's giving them all the data elements for that fucking statistical record. You are the statist. Quit giving them those data elements. Steel import and monitoring analysis system. They do the same thing with everything you import. That medical record is an import record. And they are analyzing you according to the data elements you give them. Link to an amendment published at 85 FR 83814. Notice that link sent me to another page where you had to copy the link. That's cybersecurity. It's creating a private route within the programming. Federal Register. List of subjects, Part 361, Administrative Practice and Procedure, Business and Industry, Imports, Reporting, and Record-Keeping Requirements, Aluminum. Online registrations, automatic issuance of import license. Supplementary amendments. Supplementary information, second and subsequent notices. Why it came to aluminum, I don't know. Don't ask me. I have no idea. Have no idea why it took us there. 39 CFR. You guys recognize that one? That's the Postal Service. Okay? International Postal Service. You have a right, under the Treaty of Berne again, protection of literary and artistic works, to be able to post them in any media. You do not need a postal worker to do it for you. You do not need an international contract. Okay? All you have to do is adopt various different documents. Like I showed you on my site, I've adopted all those documents. So all you got to do is adopt them. Let them know that you're aware of it and you have education. And you're no longer going to let them fuck with you, because you're not going to enter documents or enter data elements into their records so they can file them for their commercial immoral use. Not going to happen. 361 goes to that. Excuse me, that's the wrong one. We need to go here. Sorry. General information on Postal Service. See that cross-reference, incorporation by reference. This is why we have to do the cross-reference. So it's not incorporated by reference. You give them a cross-reference so they can't incorporate it. Okay? Hazardous, restricted, and perishable mail. Going back to the trust again. Foreign trade regulations. 19 CFR 360 and 361 again. There's 39 again. Same again, same again, same again. Eligible articles. Eligible articles. Unless otherwise excluded from eligibility by this chapter and subject to Section 423 of the Tax Reform Act, it must be a taxable article. It must be a commercial article. It must have the intent of performing the functions of public office. Must. Customs Forfeiture Fund. They have a fund to qualify for recoupment. There is established in the Treasury of the United States a fund known as the Customs Forfeiture Fund, which shall be available to United States Customs Service, subject to appropriation with respect to seizures and forfeitures by the United States Customs Service and the United States Coast Guard. I've been telling you, the Coast Guard is the policing authority. They regulate all police throughout the country. That's why the police come and grab all of your shit and not the Coast Guard. Not the Customs Service. It's the police at the local levels that are coming and grabbing your shit because you're the one saying you're a resident. And they will believe you every time you say that. Because that's what gives them authority in that zone. Here we go. 50 CFR 12 again. Seizure and forfeiture procedures. They're supposed to be protecting life, liberty. Beneficiary country. The term beneficiary country means a country listed in subsection B, which means you already have to have a name recognized in their record so that you can benefit from that record. Therefore, you're classified as a beneficiary country and not just a mere beneficiary. Okay? (1872) Interagency Trade Organization. I am not organized to trade with the other interagencies. I'm not going to do it anymore. Establishment functions. Membership and composition. Remember we talked about the college composition handbook. How is it composed? What is its position? Position with. Are you with your Father which art in heaven, or are you with the president as a resident? Participating in representatives of other agencies in their meetings because you gave data elements and don't get to go into the meeting. Trade Remedy Assistance Office. There is established in the Commission. United States International Trade Commission. Everything's a commission. Just like a sales commission. Interagency organization. Where'd I go here? Trade Remedy Assistance. They have to cooperate. Section 339 of the Tariff Act of 1930 as amended established a commission and office known as the Trade Remedy Assistance and directs the commission to provide general information to the public upon request. See, this is the problem. We should be requesting this at all times, so that we can show that we have to keep our children out of school, the public education system, because the public education system is training our children in a military script and not the scriptures that we should be using as our holy writs. Language very specific there, folks. Repealed Reemployment Trade Adjustment Assistance Program. Reemployment Trade Adjustment Assistance Program, because they realized this isn't going to be any good. People are going to realize they're being reemployed in the trade, and their adjustment assistance program. Limitations on trade readjustment allowances. There's a limitation on it. You have to put the limitation on it, not subject to it. Weekly amounts of readjustment allowance. Agreements with the states. The Secretary is authorized on behalf of the United States to enter into an agreement with any state. Did you enter into an agreement properly and make a proper declaration so that it was entered properly? No, this never happened. It's presumed. They have an agreement with the United States and the state. That is the debt previously contracted. It does not carry on to you except by the assumptions that you're making based on their presumptions. Quit it. Qualifying requirements for workers. See, like I said earlier, you're acting as a tax collector, you're acting as a postman, you're acting as a banker, you're acting as a lawyer. You're doing everything on a presumption or assumption, and they are accepting it. Okay? No war operates on one. It has to have two parties. You're party to it. Benefit information for workers. See, they're not going to give you any benefit information until you become classified as a worker. Then it can benefit you. Otherwise, you have to learn all this shit on your own. That's the only way you get a benefit out of this. And that's why I keep telling people the true benefit under Hosea 4 verse 6 is knowledge. Knowledge of letting no tongue prosper against you. And the only way you can let no tongue prosper against you is by learning the tongue. Okay, let's go back to petitions and determinations. See, we're not going to petition them. We're going to make a valid declaration that they can't deny, and we're not going to do it to the United States. We're going to do it to the UN. We got to quit monkeying with these monkeys. If you want to be a living soul, you have to act like a living soul and not a monkey, repeating after everybody else. General terms and conditions for investment assistance. Why is this? Business credit and assistance in the statistics. Huh? This is the statistics title. And like I said, when you walk into that court and you give them a name and number, they are entering you as an investor in the court registry investment system and putting your name down as a firm name and not the last name, and using the Social Security number as the obligor number instead of the beneficiary. You're entering into a business credit and assistance. They can only get it by you. They can only have it by your credit. And they have your assistance in doing it. You are assisting them. Trade adjustment assistance for firms. Like I said, and I've got documentation that proves this. You walk into court here. Well, I don't know if they do it anymore. because I've spouted out over for the last 6 years. But I went down there and I got a financial index, full index on all court charges that I have in these courts in Iowa, all 93 cases. And at the very top, it says that it was entered as a firm. I've never organized as a firm. I never knew that that's what they were doing on that docket. But that unlawful conversion is in fact immoral. And it leads back to that birth registration and all the confusion and the non-education about how it works. In the public education forum. Period. Shows it on the record. It's false. Group eligibility requirements. The group is the residents in the school zone that is monitored by the voting zones. Agricultural workers, oil and natural gas industry, because you are multiple cultures, you are considered workers, and they provide the utilities from the oil and natural gas industry. Did you guys know that you're not supposed to be paying for electric at all? Electric is supposed to be free. And that's why they only put oil and natural gas industry. Petitions and determinations. Again. Market disruption. If you don't qualify as a resident, you should be disrupting their market, because they're unlawfully using that definition, that classification for their marketing, for their advertising. They can only get their advertising to you through that resident address. Investigations relating to global and bilateral safeguard actions for market disruption, trade diversion, and review of relief action. I urge people to quit going to those courts. You do not belong in those courts. As soon as you step into those courts, you're considered on the other side of the ledger as investing in their market. True tort claims are handled by the Postal Service, guys. Action to facilitate positive adjustment to import competition. It's a positive adjustment on this side, and it's a negative adjustment on the other side, because like I said, they're going to treat you as an investor in their court registry investment system without qualification. Organization of the Commission, that's the Federal Trade Commission. Investigations relating to global steel import. 7 CFR. Ooh. Check that one out. See what the 7 CFR? There's your agriculture. International agricultural trade. You are multiple cultures. They call it the melting pot of the world. United States is the melting pot because it's so full of agriculture. Okay. So anyway, I'm going to drop this link so everybody can read this stuff, but as we go on, you'll see all kinds of different codes here. They're going to tell you the titles and everything. These are the statute side, and this is the regulation CFR side. Okay? So when you go through and you look, 4609, not found. That's the military right there. Nationality right there. 50 USC. War and National Defense, current through 114. And it says, Appendix War and National Defense has been eliminated for disposition of provisions of former Title 50 Appendix in Title 50 War and National and other titles. See Table 2 of the editorial notes set out preceding Section 1 of Title 50. Provisions that appeared under the heading Proclamations, Executive Orders, Joint Resolutions, and Treaties respecting war, neutrality, and peace. In material preceding Section 1 of Title 50, Appendix can be found under the same heading in the material preceding Section 1 of Title 50. This is telling you how to write your statements of peace, your proclamations, declarations, and everything. Under 50 U.S.C. 4305, Section B2, we talk about full acquittance and discharge wherein no person shall be held liable in any court. And this is why it's important to let no tongue prosper against you. And this is why it's important to learn their tongues. We have to go through these codes to see what they're doing. 37 CFR. Patent, trademarks, and copyright. Secrecy of certain inventions and licenses to export and file applications in foreign countries. They violated this with the birth registration. This is what makes it immoral. They took something that was inherently yours as a child to be able to patent and trademark and copyright later when you got age of majority, and they put it on a document that says it's a merchandise document. That merchandise document is being used throughout your entire life without a proper patent, trademark, and copyright protection. They failed to institute it properly by proper education of how it was to be used. So now we got all these 50 U.S. codes here. Not found. Repealed. Repealed. And again, you can go through and read the notes on these and find out what they related to. It'll tell you what they related to. Okay? Go through all of them. I'm going to scroll down here. Like I said, I'll drop this link, but I want to go through some of these other codes. You notice there's a bunch of 19s and 13s. We're going to get down here a ways, and we're going to find out how 19 ties in with, and of course you see 20. It's employment, custom employment, which is a military provision, so the employment is a military force, and how it relates to nationality. And you notice Title 15 in there, that's trade or international trade and trust law, or trade and commerce, which is in fact trust law. And you can tell this by 15 U.S.C. 1, trust. It's telling you it's trust law. .35 is patent and trademarks. 35 in the code, the regulations is Panama Canal. So this title does not match the code of regulations, and that's why there's no regulations here. This is the patent code, and the Title 35 under the regulations is Panama Canal, because that's where all the documents are imported through. And so they're claiming patent and trademarks on that name through the birth registration. This is why I say it's immoral. Okay? Military Code, Title 10. Revised Title 41. Let's get down here to these military codes and nationality. Ooh, I see a 49. Did I see a 49? 49 is transportation. No. Maybe it's 29. 29 is labor. And there's a bunch of your agricultural export promotion strategy. There you go. They're exporting all those data elements from all the different cultures. Title 22 is foreign relations. Bank loan loss reserves. Policy. Oops, that's the wrong one. Fair trade and financial services. They violate that with the birth registration. That's an unfair trade document causing restrictions. 12 CFR banking. Here we go. There's some 50s. 504305. There it is. Full of quittance and discharge, folks. And as we see, the CFR is correlating under 15 CFR trust law at 730 general information. Commerce Control List overview of the country chart. If you're not on this list, they have no control. I just posted this yesterday or so. 774 is the Commerce Control List itself. Commerce Control List overview and the country chart. Okay. We go down further. 1295A, 19 CFR 161 is omitted, and it is in relation to regulation of transactions and foreign exchange of gold, silver, property transfer, vested interest, enforcement and penalties was omitted because Section 4305B 2, full acquittance and discharge. Okay? Is everybody comprehending this? They replaced, they removed all the gold and everything and replaced it so you don't have to use gold anymore. You can just issue a declaration or a directive to the nation under Title 12 for all banking procedures for fair trade in financial transactions. Okay? And it's relating to 19 CFR 1864, import sanctions for export violations. When that organization imports a record, they are the importer of the record, they are liable for that record. If they turn around and export it, and it's false, and they haven't verified that it's true, they are liable. So if you give them a record, and it's a resident record, and they don't verify that you're actually a resident under 19 U.S.C. 81O, that it's the only persons allowed to reside in the zone are federal, state, or municipal officials or agents. If they don't qualify that themselves and then export that record to somebody else, making that other person liable, they become liable for sanctions because they're the one that exported it to somebody else, now making them liable. This is INCO terms under UNCTAD and UNCITRAL. Okay? Any person who violates any national security export control imposed under 4604 of Title 50 or any regulation, order, or license issued under that section may be subject to such controls of the importing of goods or technology into the United States as the President may prescribe. 18 U.S.C. 8 and 18 U.S.C. 7, special maritime and territorial jurisdiction over the obligations and other securities of the United States, including stamps and other representatives of values, and canceled United States stamps. The canceled United States stamp still has value. Why? Because it shows a fidelity bond with the Postal Service. Here we go. Here's the other one. Export and import of nuclear equipment and material. Why are we talking about nuclear equipment and material, folks? Because you are a nuclear plant. Your body has nucleuses all over the place, and it goes through nuclear exchanges all day long on a quantum micro level. You are a nuclear energy station. Nuclear energy plant. Again, 15 CFR and 50, nationality and trust. To go to 37, which is patent and trademark, secrecy of certain inventions and licenses to export and file applications in foreign countries. I can't file applications in foreign countries because I hold my own secrecy. I pray in private. War and national defense current through, that's that same one. 752 is not found. So it goes back to the patent. And remember, folks, a patent doesn't need to be written down. When they use patent here, it's a false term. Patent is observable. So in their confidentiality of patents and trademarks, they can only expose certain things. It is not completely observable. Patent is observable. It means it is. And there's no fiction about it. If it's on a piece of paper, the paper is patent. The words in it are not. Let's go down a little bit further, because I know there's a whole section here that had all kinds of 50 USCs. Okay, here we got a 50 USC 1702 as presidential authorities, and then when we click on the CFRs that it relates to, we've got a bunch of trust, and then the one on general enforcement for the customs, and then a bunch of 31s, which are money and finance, sale and issue of marketable book entry treasury bills, notes, and bonds. Again, it's an immoral birth certificate bonding, birth registration bonding, reporting procedures and penalties regulations, North Korea sanctions. And now we're going to get into all the sanctions. Iranian asset control regulations. Narcotics trafficking. Weapons of mass destruction. Zimbabwe sanctions. And they've got that whole list of sanctions of people that they've already dealt with. Okay? And there's the patent one again. And then we get into 715 CFR, which is the trust activities involving Schedule 2 chemicals, enforcement. Let's look at that again. Enforcement under Commerce and Trade Regulations, Bureau of Industry and Security. Bureau of Industry and Security, obligations and other securities of the United States. Scope of the Export Administration Regulations. This is not in regards to your exporting. They are the importer of your data elements. They are the importer of the record in that case. General prohibitions. 15 CFR Part 7. Bureau of Industry and Security, Department of Commerce. This is the Department of Commerce. Bureau of Vital Statistics. It's their security. Obligations and other securities are their status mentality of keeping records known as statistics that are false. There's not one statistic on that record that can possibly be true. If that statistical record is operating under a trust of nationality and it doesn't purport any beneficiaries, where the fuck are all the beneficiaries under that trust? It's false. It's immoral. There's that 19 CFR 161 again, general enforcement provisions. 50 USC 1702 is the presidential authorities. 31 is the financial transactions. 50 USC 4610, not found. 15271 findings and purpose. The Congress finds and declares the following. The Congress here has to follow the Congress of the Postal Union. So I don't give a fuck what they write there. Let's keep going, because I know there's a whole section of a bunch of 50s. See what 4565 is. Authority to review certain mergers, acquisitions, and takeovers. The merger is presumed because you file everything as a resident. You give them a name and address instead of a number in lieu of the name and address, letting them know that you're the beneficiary and they need to send all bills to this name and this address. Social Security Administration, Baltimore, Maryland. 31 CFR 800-801 again. 21 CFR, that's employment. Maybe I went too far. Maybe that's it. Okay. Well, anyway, I guess that's it then. Just wanted to show you. And I know it's a longer video, but I've done my research. And I'm done playing around with people asking questions that are already answered and can be answered very simply by your own research. I'm done answering questions. I'm not going to answer questions anymore. My page is closed. I've got a thing up there, and you really need to pay attention to that. It's going to be in the post below this video. I'm going to post this video, but I'll probably pull it, because it comes down to language and that public education system and how you're entering your children into that system without paying attention to your own spirituality. And so I'm not going to answer questions from people that aren't in their spirituality. You want to come to me with a question? It better be a valid question, because I'm just going to ignore people that ask questions that are already open to the public. You already have your answer. All you got to do is punch that question into your search engine. Don't ask me. I'm not your fucking search engine. Not going to do it anymore. From now on, I'm going to do one-on-ones. You want to keep being involved in that military script and keep filing them documents, then you ask them questions about their documents. I'm not going to answer them anymore. You want spiritual guidance? I'll give you spiritual guidance to show how to blow them out of the fucking water, and that's the question I will answer. And if you want to ask me questions, you need to be able to figure out my transcripts, the way I communicate. So maybe even at least make an attempt to solve the quiz that I put down in the post below this video. And your attempt's got to be valid. It obviously looks like more than just 3 words, so don't make guesses. Tired of guessing. Tired of 98% of the people believing that they owe taxes, so they pay taxes voluntarily. 98% of the people believe they need to send their kids to the public education system so they can indoctrinate them into that same fucking military tax system. I'm not going to do it anymore. I put enough information out there for traffic citations. You should be able to beat a traffic citation like that. And yet nobody is beating the traffic citation because they don't believe me. There exists no proper certification for that certificate of title. Therefore, they put out a false certificate. And you're the one allowing them to do it because you have to have a handwritten statement of your intent to perform the functions of public office. And without that, you keep crying, how do I get out of this traffic ticket? I got a driver's license and insurance and registration and everything. How do I get out? I gave you the answer. If you don't have an oath of office, they can't make you register your car. To then qualify it with a handwritten statement of your intent to use it for the performance of the functions of public office. If you don't have an oath of office, they are screwed. I put out all this information. And I've been doing that one for a couple of years. I put that certification as false out over 2 years ago, almost 3 years ago. And not one person has come back to me with a fucking success story. Not one. I'm sick. Because everybody keeps coming back with the same question. I got pulled over. How do I do it? Well, you write them a real nice handwritten statement. Certification is false because I never made a statement of my intent to perform the functions of public office according to 26 USC 7701 subsection 8, Motor Vehicle Operators Lease. No data elements were entered into the record saying that. And you have not imported that record. Therefore, it's false. And it is that simple. Plain language. And it's because people are too lazy to fucking read. I went through this whole fucking thing, checking out each code. And I did it. And I'm giving you the idea of how to do it. And yet, I'm the one you choose to not believe. I'm the one that you choose not to take action on. And I'm the one that's got 93 cases in 3 decades. And then all of a sudden I educated myself and it quit. 6 years now, nothing on that record. Why do you suppose that is? Because I'm lying to you? Because I don't know what I'm talking about? Then you go ahead and keep listening to people like Chris Hauser. And God bless him, I love Chris Hauser. He's a great man. He's intelligent. And he knows what he's doing in that stuff. But if you don't, and you start entering in documents like that, you better know what the fuck you're talking about. Otherwise, you dismiss it by letting them know they have no such record. It's that simple. It really is. You are making too much of it if you are still stuck in it and running around asking people how to get out of a fucking traffic citation. Like I said, I'm sick. I can't believe this. See, that's what I'm upset about. I don't give a fuck that people don't donate to PayPal. I didn't have a PayPal when I started out. I quit banking for that reason. I don't need money to do what I'm doing. But it sure as hell would be profitable unto men if you would do the fucking good works of correcting the record like I'm trying to teach you. Actions speak louder than words. And if you think you got a pocket full of money and that's going to get you out of that license plate division down at the local private prison, then you go right the fuck ahead and keep using that military script. Keep enforcing it yourself. Because that's what you're doing. You send your children to the public education system, and that's what you enforce. You enforce somebody else to educate your children instead of the spirituality that you're supposed to be using yourself to teach them. That's what makes you immoral. You have no moral foundation. And you prove it by sending your children to a fucking school. You prove it by going to the hospital, not realizing that you're in a spiritual sense. And that guy that you fucked to have that baby ain't there with you? Got somebody else catching that baby? Well, no wonder that baby's confused on who his daddy is. See, I don't know who caught me. But I know I was there when my little baby girl was born, and she had to come out C-section. So they had a couple things that were a little bit different. But when my boy was born, I'm the one that caught him. I wasn't even able to keep my family together long enough to keep my kid from going into school. Because my boy died. And the night we buried him, the woman that gave birth to my children, that bare my children, was suicidal. And when we called the police to help her, so that we could at least maintain in the existence of the family that we had at that point, even though we lost our youngest member, instead of helping, in the call of 911, and somebody coming to help, instead of sending an ambulance, they sent the fucking police, and instead of helping anybody, they arrested us both. Because that's the only thing they see in their eyes is that fucking military script. Money. Dollar signs. Keep feeding them. I'm not going to do it anymore. If you want me to feed you, you got to come to me in the right aspect. And that is spiritual in every sense of the word, because I will not put up with this bullshit anymore. Have a good day.